Hi, everyone. Welcome to TomRafteryTV. My name is Tom Raftery, and with me on the show today, I have my special guest, Joe. Joe, welcome to the show. Would you like to introduce yourself?
It's a pleasure to be here, Tom. I'm Joe Starwood. I serve as our worldwide mining industry leader here at Microsoft. Coming up next month, I'll be celebrating 13 years with Microsoft. My original background was as an exploration geologist and geophysicist. I did prospecting for copper, gold, silver, and molybdenum in the Western U.S.
Wow. Okay. It's an interesting time, I got to think, with the energy transition, with the movement away from coal and then oil and gas as well further down the line. Is that having an impact that you've seen on mining companies to date so far?
Well, it's certainly having two obvious impacts. We do see our mining clients working really hard to move away from diesel and other carbon-based energy sources. So
Mm.
working on things like augmenting their power with solar and wind, finding clean and renewable sources for electrical power, moving to electrical vehicles. So all of that matters a great deal.
Mhm.
Likewise, our mining partners are doing the same thing. Those that provide heavy equipment are looking for ways to use batteries or hydrogen in order to power those vehicles and get the diesel and the emissions out of the movable equipment fleet.
I saw an article this morning. It was talking about Fortescue, an Australian mining company out of Pilbara, who are using, I think the figure was 1 billion liters of diesel per annum, and they want to stop using it. So they're investing in not hydrogen. They trialed hydrogen and it didn't work for them. So they're moving to electric trucks, and they're spending something like, I don't know if this is the correct number now, but they're spending a huge amount of money on these massive electric trucks. So it's interesting to see that kind of shift happen. On the IT front as well, though, we're starting to see shifts in the mining industry as well, no?
So, yes, we are certainly seeing shifts both within IT and OT. And touching base a little bit on the electric vehicles, I just returned from Mine Expo 2024 in Las Vegas and actually had the opportunity to see that some of the movable equipment fleet providers are developing hybrid equipment, so able to
Mm.
switch between diesel and electric, which actually provides a unique level of flexibility for the mining enterprise because we work in a wide range of environmental conditions. On the OT and IT side, we're definitely seeing a stronger push towards marrying OT with IT so that we can get higher levels of business value out of our information. There was quite a number of discussions at Mine Expo 2024 around really being able to process real-time and near real-time OT data and be able to act on that much more quickly rather than being reactive, start moving much more into a proactive, even prescriptive sort of nature, which could be very, very helpful. And certainly on the OT side, I mean, on the IT side, we still see a lot of efforts with our miners to wrap up their digital transformation work that they're doing, getting their data foundation and their digital maturity and digital effectiveness in place. For those that are farther along in their digital transformation, we're seeing a lot of efforts around the AI transformation, and they're doing lots of interesting work in that space to get additional value out of their operations.
And how about cloud? Because I was speaking to one of your colleagues, Bilal, who works in the energy and
Uh-huh.
utilities section of Microsoft, and we had a discussion around the move to cloud. Is that something that's happening in the mining space as well?
It certainly is. I think it's a move that came later as an industry than other industries. I was
Mm.
certainly part of working with other industries and saw them move a bit ahead of mining. However, once miners got on board with the cloud, they really started to adopt it very, very rapidly. The climb from zero to cloud was much steeper in my mind for mining than it was the other industries. So I think they really leveraged the lessons learned from the other industries. It is uneven. Even as of this past year, came across a miner who's really just starting their digital transformation journey and just starting to get into the cloud. So there are a few laggards out there, but those organizations that really want to get value out of their operations, out of their supply chain, they really need to be able to use AI in an effective way, get value from their data, and really the only way to do that is do that digital transformation, build that systems of intelligence layer that we call the data foundation, and really build the digital maturity and digital effectiveness to convert that data into insights, which ultimately go into actions.
Right. And is Is AI the main driver for mining companies to migrate their workloads to the cloud, or is there something else? Are there other burning platforms, or is it just because everyone else is doing it?
I think the answer is relatively mixed. I think the most important driver for any organization to make a decision about modernization, digitization, transformation is the business value. In fact, here at Microsoft, we often speak in terms of lead with value. It's important to get value out of these investments. And certainly that value could be different things. We see safety as a significant driver. We see things like productivity or margin or profitability be an effective driver. Sometimes it's environmental or regulation. Sometimes it is to reduce the cost and complexity of, especially on the IT side, the complexity of that estate as we face our challenges with professional resources. Mining is a very difficult industry to recruit and retain talented resources. So there's a lot of effort just to make things simpler and make better use of the resources that we have.
Sure. And what specific challenges do mining companies face migrating to the cloud? I can imagine at least one of them must be that they're often in remote places with little access to connectivity or challenging access to connectivity. Are there others?
Certainly, the connectivity is a big challenge. We have actually multiple ways of dealing with that to provide a level of service in challenging areas. But I would say the biggest challenge overall is people. Mining is all about people. And if you're into digital transformation or AI transformation, those are also all about people. It really requires a fundamental shift in the organization from the leadership all the way down, and likewise building from bottom up to develop a culture of innovation, a culture of data, a culture of security, but to be able to use these tools effectively and to innovate effectively across the business value chain, across the operational chain, in order to really solve problems and capture opportunities.
And how does the migration impact the operational efficiency of mining companies?
Well, that's a major driver actually for miners is to improve their operating efficiency and effectiveness, which again goes to the ability to use their resources wisely, develop a profitable enterprise, achieve their margins, meet their and contractual requirements. So, yeah, it plays a key role there.
Okay. And what would be the most common workloads or applications that mining companies prioritize for cloud migration?
So, really, what we saw early on with digital transformation was a common set of use cases or scenarios that most miners and, quite frankly, other industries as well very often relied upon, especially in the industrial space. Predictive and preemptive maintenance was really an important one. Process optimization and stability was a second area. We saw significant efforts around safety, especially
Mm.
digital and AI can be very, very effective in the safety space. And we also saw efforts to deliver insights to decision makers. So we saw a lot of work around dashboards and then later on control towers.
Okay. And what about data security and ensuring compliance when migrating to the cloud? Is that a big issue?
Security is absolutely a huge, huge issue for a couple of reasons. Number one, the security threat space is accelerating. We're seeing more attacks, and those attacks are much more sophisticated.
Mm.
Secondly, some recent articles that have come out over the past year have indicated that miners in certain geographies, such as Australia and elsewhere, may be somewhere around 30 to 40% less capable than pure industrial industries as well. So there
Mm.
are some significant challenges there to catch up on the security side and then to meet that threat head on and really provide a robust security for the enterprise, for the assets, for the data, for the people, for customers.
And compliance?
Compliance continues to be a significant challenge. It's a multidimensional challenge because it depends on the topic for the compliance. We're seeing
Mm.
lots of work around emissions compliance, especially as relates to your opening questions around the energy transition and emissions and carbon footprint. So we're seeing a lot of work, in terms of recording and reporting data and a lot of work around developing automation to those reports, since they're very predictable in terms of the organizations, and there are certain standards and formats those have to be in for the governing organizations.
Okay. What role does real-time data analytics play in the decision to move to the cloud?
That is kind of a two-sided question, because when we get into the hard real-time systems, when we're dealing with sub 50 millisecond response times, we're in industrial settings, those are the kinds of response times that are achieved by, on premises and at edge AI type of capabilities. Really, for the real time and near real time, that gets set up to the cloud for additional analytics beyond what can be done at the edge or on site location. We have to provide the type of insights on location that provide for not only a continuity of production, but also continuity of safety, of health, of environmental protection. And those response times are the limiting factor as to what can go in the cloud and what needs to be responded to in the manufacturing execution system.
Okay. Do you have any examples you can share about how cloud migration has transformed outcomes from mining companies?
So one of the ones that I particularly like is Kennametal. Kennametal actually provides parts and equipment to the mining industry. So they're a heavy manufacturer, and they were at Mine Expo 2024 last week as well. They undertook an effort to envision their factory of the future as an Industry 4.0 factory. So they took a very comprehensive approach to their digital transformation, to their use of AI, and especially to their relationship to OT, to the data that's coming off of the operations, off of the sensors and devices. I think that's a particularly good example. Another example that I like is Minsur, which is a leading tin company out of Peru. And they had a situation in which they needed to do water processing and treatment on processed water, the water we use in the manufacturing process itself. And they were able to use video analytics to analyze the foaming on the water and be able to make sure that they return that water to the environment in a well-treated state, that it was safe for the environment. So it's a relatively simple example, but a very good example that had a very positive environmental impact, and that maintained their license to operate, with the local community.
Nice. And how do mining companies manage the integration of legacy systems with their cloud-based solutions? I know that's always challenging.
So we're seeing a lot of work around a couple of things. In some cases, we're seeing that integration made easier by actually moving some of the legacy systems, such as the ERPs and CRMs, into the cloud. They don't have that sub-millisecond type response range that the manufacturing systems have. So it's a great place to put it. And once it's in the cloud, you can begin to actually use things like Databricks and Fabric and Synapse and so forth to get that data into a format and that you can analyze it, draw insights, and ultimately have actions arise from those insights. So we're seeing migration of those kind of core systems going on fairly regularly right now.
And what would be cost considerations for mining companies when moving their workloads to the cloud?
So, Tom, with respect to looking at it from a cost perspective, I would say that there's a significant challenge with doing that. We've seen this not only in the mining industry, but in other industries. If one takes a cost only perspective, and especially if that cost only perspective is arising out of IT, frequently, not always, but frequently, we see real challenges around getting business buy-in to actually invest in that particular migration or transformation. And even if there is an investment or a commitment to doing it, sometimes it falls short because it's really being based on a cost that is central to IT. Where we see success is when we can relate it to a value proposition. How is it going to help the business do business better? How is it going to help with the key indicators for the business, whether it's profitability, production, reliability, efficiency, safety, health, environment, regulatory compliance, risk management. Though if we could connect the modernization or the transformation to some value drivers, it's much easier to get the business buy-in to make the modernization or transformation become an effective and viable project and deliver a result.
Okay. And how do you see the future of cloud adoption evolving in the mining industry, particularly with the rise recently, as we're seeing, of AI and IoT?
Now, that is a really interesting question because we continue to see that strengthening of the marriage between the operations side of the house and the IT side of the house, so IT and OT together. And one of the big areas that we need to overcome and that we are actively working on is how do we provide for secure IT OT in a Purdue model aligned architecture. So we're actually working on a reference model to address that and to answer questions from our mining clients and other industrial clients around basically the landing zone in the cloud for OT. It's an important question. We're now breaching that question and we're working on the answer to that architecture.
Okay. And you said that the mining companies have ramped up faster than many other industries. Is there any particular reason why they ramped up so quickly? Is it suddenly they said, oh my gosh, we're behind everyone else? Or did they see massive value that they hadn't seen before? Or what factors caused that ramp up, do you think?
From the mining clients that I had an opportunity to observe, I think a great deal of it was pressure from senior leadership, be it the C-level or the board, but also the ability to leverage experiences and the work that had been done by other industries, especially other industrial industries. So getting to the cloud is much easier if someone has already paved the way for you and shown the way. I remember the early days of cloud when there were no paved pathways, and it was very, very difficult. So I think the paving of the pathways and having good, strong leadership commitment is what really accelerated that for mining.
Okay, cool. What metrics or KPIs should mining companies focus on to measure the success of their migration to cloud? And how would they ensure continuous improvement?
For key indicators, I would really come back to lead with value. What are we trying to accomplish by moving to the cloud, by modernizing our ITS state and moving those workloads to the cloud, and measure it in terms of the business outcomes that were achieved or improved by that action, the value that arose from those improvements, and really also look at the people. How deeply have we inculcated a innovation culture, a data culture, a security culture into our workforce, and how well are we actually using that in conjunction with our suppliers and vendors and with our customers, because it's really important that this not just be inside of the corporate walls. This really is a transformation that involves the extended enterprise and being able to work better and smarter with customers, with suppliers and vendors, with other bodies as well.
Okay. And in your dealings with mining companies who are moving to the cloud, what have you come across that has surprised you most?
The thing that both surprises me, yet in a way does not surprise me, is some of the misunderstandings. So we've had the pleasure of working with a couple of mining clients over the past few years, and I think there was a misunderstanding about the nature of building your data foundation. In order to have a successful digital transformation, you must build a good systems of intelligence layer, that digital foundation. And to have really good outcomes in terms of AI transformation, you must then leverage that digital foundation. I think the important misunderstanding that we have seen is that a couple of miners have undertaken it to build a data foundation, but did not sufficiently anchor it in terms of the business value. What are the business outcomes and the value to be realized? And those ultimately led to those efforts being canceled after a couple of years because, of course, the answer was they didn't see value from the investment. So we come back always again, lead with value. What's the business problem we're trying to solve? What's the business opportunity we're trying to capture? What outcome do we need? And what is the value that we'll realize by doing that? If you pivot off that value, it makes the other investment decisions and the work that you do much more sensible.
Okay. A left field question for you, Joe. If you could have any celebrity or fictional character, alive or dead, as a spokesperson for cloud in mining, who would it be and why?
Tom, I believe I really have to go with 4 people here. First,
Okay.
I would really want to bring in the authors of a wonderful book called Leading Digital. It's a book about how to conduct successful digital transformation. The authors are George Westerman, Dieter Bonnet, and Andrew McAfee. And then the other author would be Satya Nadella, who wrote Hit Refresh. I think these 2 books are wonderful companions for anyone interested in doing digital transformation as well as setting up a foundation for AI transformation.
Great. Joe, we're coming towards the end of the podcast now. Is there any question I did not ask that you wish I did, or any aspect of this we haven't covered that you think it's important for people to be aware of?
Tom, I think one area that we have to pay particular attention to beyond the ones we've already discussed is the area of the mining supply chain and the regulatory environment that we find ourselves in. We're finding that a number of nations have implemented either incentives or policies around energy transition and therefore climate smart minerals. We also see nation states developing strategic and critical mineral lists and developing strategies for whom they will deal with and what they will develop internally. These things are all fundamentally changing how we do trading within mining. We're essentially changing who the suppliers are, who the buyers will be, and that affects everything in between, not only just from, a relationship perspective, but what ports or terminals do we ship from? Which shipping lines? What's the demand on ports and terminals? What's the demand on shipping lines? So we're fundamentally turning the world upside down. We have to be ready for a great deal of chaos, even in our marketplace. And having a digital foundation, having artificial intelligence insights is a way of accelerating our ability to see into those challenges and into those changes and be able to respond not just reactively, but proactively in order to have effective outcomes in terms of supplying minerals to customers worldwide, as well as receiving parts and consumables or equipment to our mine sites and mill sites from suppliers and vendors.
Okay, very good. Very good. Joe, if people would like to know more about yourself or any of the things we discussed in the episode today, where would you have me direct them?
So a couple places they can reach out to me at joseph.starwood@microsoft.com, or they can find me on LinkedIn under Joseph Starwood.
Fantastic. Joe, that's been really interesting. Thanks a million for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Tom. It was a pleasure.